Struggle Isolation Edition. Australia and China engaged in a public stoush. Students sitting open-air exams. And the state government embroiled in koala cures. In terms of foreign policy, it would seem the regime in Canberra has issued a D-notice to local media, instructing them to mentally prepare the public for a conflict with China. Yes, things have dramatically changed since Chinese President Xi Jinping's 2014 visit to Australia, when momentary Prime Minister Tony Abbott said no Chinese leader has ever been anything like such a good friend to Australia. Instead, we have seen a deluge of reporting and coverage, some of it seemingly backgrounded by our intelligence agencies exposing the dastardly campaign being waged against freedom-loving Australians by those inscrutable Orientals. Has China finally shown its true colors, or is this news cycle conveniently aligning with US Secretary of State and far-right religious fundamentalist Mike Pompeo's threat to disconnect from Australia if we stay too close to China? Joining us now to discuss on this is Suze from PR.
Thanks, Tavleen. And firstly, I would just like to say that the Australian intelligence community never tells the media what to publish. We ask nicely, and they do it without question. And that's what makes Australia such a great country, is that we don't have an aggressive state-controlled media who try to control the narrative. We just have privately owned companies who toe the line in exchange for access and a naive sense of nationalism. It's important to remember that we're not like communist China. China raids on journalists who report on their frequent human rights abuses in order to silence them. When we do it, it's for national security. And what about when they kicked out 2 Australian journalists for no apparent reason? Don't tell me it's because we did it first. We can't stick our heads in the sand and pretend that this is some tit-for-tat stoush between 2 amoral, self-interested states. Their actions are purely a product of their Marxist-Leninist philosophy. China is obsessed with maintaining its communist orthodoxy. That's why it arbitrarily denies visas to visiting academics. But obviously the reason we do it is because foreigners are a threat to the public. We believe in the marketplace of ideas, especially here at... Look, at the end of the day, it's important to remember, just like one of our operatives told the ABC, the Chinese mind is like a spiderweb, complex and inscrutable. We can no sooner understand them than we can understand why Timor-Leste would want access to the Timor Gap. Back to you, Tavleen.
Thanks, Suze. I'm sure none of what you said will put us on any kind of Asia watch list. In honor of the 20th anniversary of the Sydney Olympics, the Olympic cauldron was lit again last week. It is great to know that the cauldron is still working even after 20 years. The only other things that have survived so long are boy bands, the Grinch, and racism. In other sporting news, the final game of the AFL season is being played tonight between Collingwood and Port Adelaide, which is quite an achievement considering only a few months back it seemed impossible that any sport could continue in the middle of a pandemic.
The AFL has moved to immediately suspend the 2020 Toyota AFL Premiership season.
Despite the coronavirus, AFL players have proved that nothing can stand between them and the game they love. Nothing except strippers and kebabs. Perhaps no other sports league in the world, however, has had more success in handling the pandemic than the NBA, who created a bubble at Disney World in Orlando. So far, there have been no positive cases. Though considering that most NBA players are taller than 2 meters, many of them have unfortunately been too tall to ride roller coasters. If the number of cases keep coming down, it's shaping up to be a great summer for sport here in Victoria. Here with some suggestions on how to keep safe is our health correspondent, Condescend.
Sports. Sports. Sprots. You know, I've been thinking. Sprots has been the one constant during this coronavirus pandemic. Sprots is the one thing that's brought us all together separately. Now, very soon, we'll be able to attend the Sprots once again. Now, I like to attend the Sprots as much as any other Aussie-Australian. And lucky for us, Daniel Andrews has announced that the Boxing Day Test, an event that doesn't involve any boxing, and the Australian Open will happen.
So I think we are, but I don't think it's going to be the Boxing Day Test like it normally is. Nor do I think the Australian Open will be exactly the same as it is.
Which brings me to why I'm here today. Now, some of our younger viewers aged in the 1 to 10 month category will never have attended Sprots before, which is why, as the health correspondent, I'm here today to advise you on some of the safe measures to take when you're attending Sprots next. Okay, let's start with cricket. If you're planning on heading out to the Boxing Day Test, don't forget to bring your mask, your sunscreen, your water bottle, and a pillow and a bucket. A pillow to rest your face and sleep on because cricket is just 5 days of nothing, and a bucket, so if you get really pissed, it's far more hygienic to chunder in your own bucket instead of the MCG public bathrooms. Health. Alright, let's move on to the Australian Open. Now, if you're an overly cautious one, I'd actually recommend the tennis. It's estimated they'll have to reduce crowds to 25% capacity. Now, when I went to the tennis last summer, I actually knew 25% of the crowd. Their names were Larry and Steve, good blokes. Divorces weren't their fault. Anyway, that's beside the point. But if you are going to go, make sure you and your mates bring some cash so you can throw a bet on for which one of the line judges will cop it in the throat next. Well, that's all from me today. Back to you in the Tavleen studio. Oh.
Yikes. Well, while Con takes a medical timeout, we'll take a commercial timeout. Welcome back. With Victoria's fight against COVID-19 dominating much of the political headlines in Melbourne, other political stories have flown under the radar. In New South Wales, Nationals leader John Barilaro threatened to leave the governing coalition after koala protection policies were announced by Premier Gladys Berejiklian. Barilaro said that the conservation policies could threaten the future of the farmers in the state, but has since retracted from the stance following a compromise within the Liberals. However, opposition leader Jodi McKay has launched a vote of no confidence against Barilaro for threatening to sink the government's stability into a crisis amidst the pandemic. The koala protection policies are now under review within the coalition, with several Nationals MPs threatening to resign if their needs are not met. Despite all the talk about protecting koalas, conservation experts have warned that much more needs to be done to save the animal from early extinction. In other political news, JobKeeper payments are set to be reduced from 28th of September, with more than 1 million Victorians set to lose $443 million worth of subsidies fortnightly. Opponents to the reduction have pleaded the coalition to rethink withdrawing the payment while Victoria is still under tight restrictions. However, the government is unlikely to concede. We now head to our truth seeker Alex James to unpack some of the issues in Australia's domestic politics.
Koalas. Aren't they cute and cuddly and so furry? But don't be sucked in. These chlamydia carriers are democracy destroyers. The New South Wales government was almost brought to its knees recently over koala policy, and while some will try and tell you it was all due to internal divisions within the coalition, don't be so gullible. This is just the latest of countless examples of animals interfering with Australian politics and trying to undermine the fundamental principles upon which our constitution was founded. Don't believe me? Don't believe that our nation's history is steeped with senior leaders who have actually been stooges for the animal kingdom? Exhibit A. Former Prime Ministers Andrew Fisher, Joseph Lyons, Bob Hawke, and more recently, what about MPs Wayne Swan, Rebecca Sharkey, Malcolm Turnbull? Unbelievable. Espionage occurring right before our very eyes. It's only a matter of time before Simon Birmingham starts winking, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. And are we just going to pretend court barristers aren't wearing wigs that look like sheep's wool every time they rock up to court? Snap out of it, sheeple! You think with the Black Death or any of these other insidious animal-transmitted diseases, we would have learnt at least one thing. We cannot trust animals. But no, these winged and scaly creatures have been welcomed right back into our society. And look where we've ended up. They've destroyed life as we know it. Beyonce was wrong. Girls don't run the world. It's run by creatures and critters all over the globe, some with links to the highest authorities, while others are spying from the crack in your wall. One thing's for sure, they're coming to get you.
Right, turning to recent pop culture news, and the queens of reality TV kingdom are calling it quits after 20 seasons and 14 years on air. That's right, the Kardashian-Jenner troupe has announced the next season of Keeping Up with the Kardashians will be their last. And the internet is divided. While some are devastated to see the show end, others couldn't be happier. So whether you were keeping up or just trying to keep away, I think we can all agree it's the end of an era. We now cross to our fangirl Sophia to get her take on the situation.
Thanks, Tavleen. Tonight, I'm a fangirl in mourning. I've been keeping up with the Kardashians for 14 years now. That's right, I've been a dedicated and loyal fan since the very beginning. And I'd just like to take a moment to reflect on the truly remarkable television that the Kardashians have blessed us with over the years. There's been tears, drama,
your sister's going to jail, have a little compassion,
and a whole lot of unrealistic beauty standards. We've seen them grow up and glow up on our screens. I mean, say what you want about the Kardashians, but no one can deny that this family really knows how to build a brand. I want to take a moment to appreciate the Kardashians for what they are, savvy businesswomen. I mean, Kris Jenner created a dynasty from her daughter's sex tape. In June this year, Kim Kardashian sold a 20% stake in her beauty line for $200 million. Kylie Jenner was named the world's youngest billionaire of all time. This level of success takes more than just booty. It takes brains. But hey, I guess Kim did learn from the best. Before she was the Kim Kardashian, she was Paris Hilton's assistant.
Hey Kim, Paris, how are you?
To the world, she was young, dumb, and super rich. But Paris has admitted that the success of a personal brand was no fluke. She curated a character. Her ditzy blonde image was designed to be as entertaining and as attention-grabbing as possible. I mean, she was literally the OG influencer. But Sophia, I hear you say, this isn't the raging noughties. Paris Hilton just isn't relevant anymore. Wrong. She might not be splashed on the front page of every gossip magazine these days, but Paris has built herself a business empire that looks like it's here to stay. Not only has she got a new documentary out on YouTube, but she has 19 product lines. Her fragrances alone have generated almost $3 billion in sales. Oh, and she's a DJ. That's hot. I mean, any tabloid would tell you that the success of Paris Hilton and the Kardashians hasn't been without scandal. And hey, I'm not denying that the privilege these guys have is out of this world. But credit where credit is due, these women are marketing geniuses. They're not just socialites, they're superpowers. You know what they say, the devil works hard, but Kris Jenner works harder. Back to you, Tavleen.
Thanks, Sophia. We are off to a quick break. Welcome back again. Ongoing restrictions, border closures, pillow bans on aircrafts, encouraging people to wear masks during sex, and rules allowing only closed-toed shoes to be sold are some of the ways countries around the globe have tried to stop the spread of coronavirus. In the latest COVID normal strategy, students in Uzbekistan are sitting exams in the open air in an effort to control the spread of the virus, even if that means a spike in heat stroke cases. Students won't be wrapped in cotton wool either and have the exams postponed just because there's a bit of a rain overhead. They'll be covered in cellophane instead. Suddenly, e-exams don't seem that bad. For more on this, let's cross to our careers advisor, Employed.
Coronavirus has caused us to alter the way we operate in 2020. Some things will change over time, like restrictions, lockdowns, and border closures. Other things we're not so sure about, like the shift in social stigma around wearing masks in public. The newest endeavour is the push to operate outdoors. Recently, tens of thousands of kids in Uzbekistan headed to sports arenas and athletic tracks to sit university entrance exams in the open air. Don't worry, children. I've got your back. If this is a permanent thing, you're going to want to listen to my advice. Tip 1. Buy SPF 50 or above sunscreen and bring it to work. We're obviously going to be spending extended periods of time outside, and it might reduce the number of cases of COVID, but it sure as hell will not reduce the cases of skin cancer. Tip 2. Buy anti-glare protectors for your laptop. At this rate, office buildings will end up looking like outdoor multi-story car parks. So my advice, if you actually want to be able to see what's on your laptop screen, get an anti-screen protector. Good thing we have such a healthy planet that will facilitate our outdoor needs for the foreseeable future. Aren't we glad we decided to support climate change so we can continue to operate outdoors without a depletion in the ozone layer that makes it so hot that you can literally curl your hair on any metal pole or live freely without extreme weather events causing bushfires and torrential rains? These kids were asked to take a 3-hour test, competing with each other and the weather for 150 university places. Their lucky 2B pencils, jackets, and papers held up as shade acted as a competitive advantage. This isn't the only strategy to utilise open-air regulations to combat COVID-19 whilst maintaining a sense of normalcy. Dan Andrews recently announced a $290 million plan to shift the hospitality industry outdoors. Tip 3. Bring back no hat, no play. Again, COVID is a threat, but so is skin cancer. If you're working outside, wear a hat. And last tip. For those of you who don't live at home, you won't have someone nagging you to bring a jacket when it's cold. So check the weather every day. The upside, vitamin D deficiencies have been linked with erectile dysfunction, so I guess no one will be lacking vitamin D after these initiatives. Back to you, Tavleen.
Thanks, Em. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode. This year, a lot of routines have changed. We grab a mask before leaving the house, getting changed out of your pajamas for the day ahead is optional, and the first thing we do now in a class is mute ourselves. But despite all the upheaval, there's something that's remained constant: our unending ability to procrastinate. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I guess I'll think about it later. Until next week, the struggle, it's real.